This is section 3.4, graphing polynomials. When you set out to graph a polynomial, there is going to be several steps that you need to do. So what I want you to do first is write down the steps so that we can go through them when we actually get to a problem. So here is the ABCDE list of what you're going to need to do. First, we're going to find the zeros. Remember, the zeros are a synonym for X-intercepts. Okay, so we're trying to find out when Y is going to be 0, what is our X value going to be? Then it wants us to find the Y-intercept. That's when X is 0. So you're going to write that as a point, 0, and then a number, just like on your X-intercepts that you write those as a number, then 0. All right, then something kind of different is something called a mid-interval. You're going to find those by taking the average of the X-intercepts for your X coordinate and then substitute it into the equation to find the Y coordinate. D is list the end behavior. End behavior is always in the format as X approaches infinity, f of X approaches, and then you'll fill in the blank. And then you have a second line as X approaches negative infinity, f of X approaches blank. So when it asks for end behavior, you're looking for those two statements, the complete statement each time with these blanks filled in. And then we're going to graph the polynomial. To graph the polynomial, it's important that you realize there's only 4 shapes that a polynomial can be. If it has an even degree and a positive leading coefficient, it would look something like an x squared. See how the degree is even and the leading coefficient is positive. This 1 right here is positive. Those all resemble a parabola. Now sometimes in the middle they've got things that go up and are weird looking, but they're all going to have both of their ends going up. Now if we stick with the even degree, but instead change it to a negative leading coefficient. So for example, negative x squared, then that's going to flip our polynomial and both of the ends are going down. So it's still an even degree here. And this 2 could be a 4 or a 6 or 100 as long as it's even. And this leading coefficient could be any negative number. So that's one scenario, or actually 2 scenarios of the 4. Then we also have odd degree, positive leading coefficient, so like an x cubed. And x cubes, call them John Travolta's because they look like the Staying Alive, John Travolta's arms going up and down. It's increasing from left to right. Or we might have an odd degree with a negative leading coefficient. Let's really mix it up this time. How about negative 2x to the 7th? So do you see how the degree is odd, but the leading coefficient's negative? This one, it still has that squiggle, but it starts high and it goes low. Every single polynomial is going to be one of those 4 shapes. So it's important to know that before you start to try to graph it. Which one of those shapes is it going to be? All right, so let's take a look at number 1. They gave us a polynomial and they told us that one of the zeros is 2. So our first goal is to find X-intercepts. the 0 right here, that's one of our x-intercepts. And we can use it to help us find the other x-intercepts. So we're going to use some synthetic division like we've been practicing. And put our coefficients across the top. And just as promised, they said it was a 0 and we got a 0. It was a cubic. We have now quadratic function here, 4x plus 3. And then we can factor that. So it multiplies to get 3 and adds to get 4, 3, and 1. So we find out that the other zeros are -3 and -1. So as far as our x-intercepts go, let's list them all out together so we don't forget them later. We have -3, 0, -1, 0, and the one they gave us, 2, 0. All right, next up on our list is to find the y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, we just put a 0 in for the x-coordinate of all of these x's. So if we put a 0 in for all of them, they're all going to go away. So we're just left with this constant, -6. All right, next up it says to find the mid-intervals. So we want to know what is the average? What's in between -3 and -2? Well, I'm sorry, I said the answer. What's in between -3 and -1? Well, it's -2. Then you're going to take -2 and put it back into your x's here and solve and see what -2 gives you. So go ahead and try that. What you should get is 4. And then we need to know what is the mid-interval between -1 and 2. So we need to find out what's that average. Well, if it's not quite as obvious as this one, -1 plus 2 divided by 2 is how we find an average. -1 plus 2 is 1. So 1/2 is halfway between -1 and 2. So again, you're going to put 1/2 back into your equation to find the corresponding y value. It's not as pretty, -7.9 for that y value. All right, after you do that, you need to figure out what the end behavior is. So we need to know, look at the degree, see how it's odd, and the leading coefficient is positive. So an odd positive is going to be one of these guys. So we're going to write those two statements that we said before. As x approaches infinity, f of x approaches blank. As x approaches -infinity, f of x approaches blank. But this time we actually have to fill in those blanks. So let's take a look. When it says x approaches infinity, that really is, when you start in the middle and move to the right, where is your graph going? Well, my graph is going up, so it's going towards positive infinity. And as x goes to -infinity, that's moving to the left. Where is my graph going? My graph is going down, so towards -infinity. So I know lots of pieces about my graph now, and I can put it all to good use by plotting it. So I'm going to plot -3, 0, -1, 0, 2, 0, and 0, -6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then plot my mid-intervals, -2, +4, and 1/2, -7.9. All right, so I've already plotted those points. Now I need to use this information because it just looks like a bunch of random dots. So I know that it's going to start low. I'm going to connect them all, and it's got to end high. I think I missed that one a little bit. So it has this basic shape where it's going down on the left and up on the right, but it does have some wiggles in the middle that we talked about might happen. All right, now number 2, we're gonna be on the next video, so you can go ahead and end this one and start the next one with number 2.